The champagne bubbles tickled my throat as I laughed at another one of Derek's jokes from accounting. The hotel ballroom sparkled with golden lights, and I felt absolutely radiant in my new black dress. This quarterly company celebration was exactly what I needed after months of Jonas being so distant and boring. "Elowen, you look amazing tonight," my coworker Jessica squealed, grabbing my arm. "I can't believe Jonas didn't come with you. If I had a fiancé who looked like that, I'd never let him out of my sight." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I rolled my eyes and took another sip of champagne. He said he had to work late, again. Honestly, sometimes I think he loves those spreadsheets more than me. The truth was, Jonas had asked if I really needed him there. He'd been so cold lately, always buried in his laptop or organizing files. When was the last time he'd made me feel special? When was the last time he'd even complimented my dress? "Well, his loss is our gain," said Marcus from the marketing team, sliding up beside me with a fresh drink. "Dance with me, Elowen. Show these corporate stiffs how it's done." The music was perfect, the attention was intoxicating, and for the first time in months, I felt alive. As Marcus spun me around the dance floor, I caught sight of myself in the mirrored wall. I looked confident, desirable, free. This was the woman I used to be before Jonas started treating me like a roommate instead of his future wife. After 3 more drinks and countless compliments from my colleagues, I excused myself to find the ladies' room. The hotel hallway was dimly lit and quiet, a stark contrast to the pulsing energy of the ballroom. I was checking my lipstick in my compact mirror when I heard a familiar voice. "Elowen, is that really you?" I turned around and my heart skipped a beat. Toby Rix stood there in a perfectly tailored navy suit, his dark hair slightly tousled in that way that used to drive me crazy. My ex-boyfriend from college, the one who got away, the one who made me feel like the most fascinating woman in the world. "Toby, oh my God, what are you doing here?" I practically squealed, suddenly feeling like I was 22 again. "Client dinner in the restaurant downstairs," he said, stepping closer with that trademark smirk. "But I heard music and thought I'd investigate. Looks like I found the most beautiful woman in the building." The compliment hit me like a warm wave. When was the last time Jonas had called me beautiful? When was the last time he'd looked at me the way Toby was looking at me right now? "You always were a charmer," I laughed, feeling the champagne making everything feel light and effortless. "I'm engaged now, you know." "Lucky guy," Toby said, but his eyes never left mine. "Though he's crazy for letting you come to a party like this alone." "He's just busy with work," I said, but even I could hear how pathetic it sounded. Always busy. "His loss," Toby said, echoing Jessica's words from earlier. "You deserve someone who appreciates what he has." The hallway suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. Toby stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, the same one he wore in college, the same one that used to make me dizzy with desire. "Elowen," he said softly, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. "You're even more stunning than you were back then." I should have stepped back. I should have mentioned Jonas again. I should have walked away. But the champagne was singing in my veins, and Toby's attention felt like sunshine after months of Jonas's cold indifference. "Toby," I whispered, and then somehow his lips were on mine. The kiss was electric, passionate, everything that had been missing from my relationship with Jonas. For 30 seconds, I felt desired, wanted, alive. When we broke apart, I was breathless and giddy. "Wow," Toby said with a grin. "Some things never change." I laughed, feeling reckless and free. "This is crazy. I can't believe I just did that." "Sometimes crazy is exactly what we need," he said, straightening his tie. "I should get back to my dinner. But Elowen, it was incredible seeing you again." He kissed my cheek and disappeared around the corner, leaving me alone in the hallway with my racing heart and smudged lipstick. I quickly fixed my appearance and headed back to the party, where Jessica and the others were waiting with fresh drinks and eager questions about where I'd disappeared to. "You look flushed," Jessica observed with a knowing smile. "Did you meet someone interesting out there?" "Just ran into an old friend," I said airily, accepting another champagne flute. "College boyfriend, actually. Total coincidence." The group erupted in excited chatter, demanding details. I found myself embellishing the story, making it sound more romantic and dramatic than it had been. Someone pulled out their phone to take pictures of our group, and I posed with my biggest smile, feeling confident and radiant. "You're glowing, girl," Marcus laughed. "Jonas doesn't know what he's missing." "His loss," I agreed, raising my glass in a toast, to unexpected encounters and living life to the fullest. We clinked glasses, and I downed the champagne in one gulp, feeling invincible. The kiss with Toby felt like a secret adventure, a reminder that I was still desirable and exciting. Jonas would never have to know, and honestly, maybe he deserved to wonder what he was missing by being so distant and boring. As the night wound down and we gathered our coats, Jessica was scrolling through the photos on her phone. "These are perfect," she said. "I'm posting them right now." Company party, living my best life, girls' night. I barely paid attention as she tagged me in the posts. I was still floating on the high of Toby's attention and the validation from my colleagues. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The Uber ride home was a blur of streetlights and satisfied exhaustion. I'd had an amazing night, reconnected with an old flame, and reminded myself that I was still an attractive, desirable woman. Jonas could keep his spreadsheets and his cold shoulder. I deserved better than a man who treated me like furniture. I fumbled with my keys at our apartment door, trying to be quiet in case Jonas was already asleep. The living room was dark, but I could see light under his office door, still working as usual. I kicked off my heels and padded to the bedroom, not bothering to check on him. As I was removing my makeup, my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at the screen and my blood ran cold. "Saw what happened. We need to talk. Jonas." My hand started shaking as I stared at the message. How could he have seen anything? He wasn't even at the party. Unless... I quickly opened Instagram to check Jessica's posts. There we were, laughing and posing in the hotel ballroom. But as I scrolled through her story, my heart sank. There was a short video clip of our group in the hallway, and in the background, barely visible but unmistakably clear, was me kissing Toby. "Oh God," I whispered, sinking onto the bed. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." But as the initial panic faded, anger began to replace it. So what if Jonas had seen the video? So what if I'd kissed an ex-boyfriend? Maybe it was time he realized what he could lose if he kept treating me like I didn't matter. Maybe this would be the wake-up call he needed to start appreciating me again. I deleted the text without responding and climbed into bed. If Jonas wanted to talk, he could bring it up like an adult instead of sending cryptic messages. I'd done nothing wrong except remind myself that I was still an attractive woman who deserved attention and romance. As I drifted off to sleep, I could hear Jonas moving around in his office, but I didn't care. Tomorrow, I'd deal with whatever drama he wanted to create. Tonight, I was going to savor the memory of feeling desired and alive again. I woke up to the sound of Jonas making coffee in the kitchen, the same mechanical routine he'd followed for years. Sunlight streamed through our bedroom curtains, and for a moment, I almost forgot about the text message and the kiss. Almost. My phone showed 17 notifications from Instagram, mostly likes and comments on Jessica's posts from last night. The video was still there, barely 3 seconds long, but clear enough to see what had happened. I quickly screenshotted the worst comments and deleted them, then blocked 2 people who'd shared the video to their own stories. "Elowen," Jonas called from the kitchen. "Can you come out here? We need to talk." His tone was flat, emotionless. Not angry or hurt, just empty. Somehow that was worse than if he'd been screaming. I threw on my robe and padded to the kitchen, where Jonas sat at our small dining table with 2 cups of coffee and his laptop open. He looked like he hadn't slept, his usually neat hair disheveled and dark circles under his eyes. "Good morning to you too," I said, trying to inject some lightness into the room. "Rough night with the quarterly reports?" "Sit down," he said quietly, not looking up from his screen. I poured cream into my coffee and sat across from him, studying his face. Jonas had always been the steady one in our relationship, the calm to my storm. Even during our worst fights, he never raised his voice or lost control. But this morning, something was different. There was a coldness in his eyes that I'd never seen before. "I saw the video," he said simply. "What video?" I asked, even though we both knew exactly what he was talking about. He turned his laptop around to show Jessica's Instagram story, paused on the exact moment when Toby's lips met mine. The image was grainy but unmistakable. "That video," he said. I stared at the screen for a moment, then shrugged. "It's not what it looks like." "Really?" Jonas asked, his voice still eerily calm. "Because it looks like my fiancé kissing her ex-boyfriend in a hotel hallway." "It was nothing, Jonas. Just a stupid drunken mistake. Toby was there for some client dinner. We ran into each other and things got a little carried away. It meant absolutely nothing." "Nothing," he repeated slowly. "Nothing," I confirmed, reaching across the table to touch his hand. He pulled away before I could make contact. "Come on, Jonas. We've been together for 4 years. You know me better than anyone. Do you really think I would throw away our relationship for some meaningless kiss with an ex?" "I don't know what to think anymore," he said, closing the laptop. "You went to a company party without me, got drunk, kissed another man, and then came home and went to bed like nothing happened." "You didn't even want to come to the party," I protested. "You said you had work to do, like always. Maybe if you'd been there, none of this would have happened." "So this is my fault?" "I'm not saying it's your fault, but Jonas, when was the last time we did anything fun together? When was the last time you made me feel special or desired? I'm 32 years old, and sometimes I feel like I'm married to a robot." Jonas was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. When he finally looked up, his expression was unreadable. "I've been working extra hours because I wanted to surprise you with a honeymoon in Italy. I've been saving every penny and researching hotels and restaurants. I had it all planned out." The words hit me like a slap. "Jonas, I didn't know—" "Of course you didn't know. It was supposed to be a surprise." He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. "But I guess it doesn't matter now." "Don't be so dramatic," I said, my guilt quickly morphing into irritation. "It was one kiss, Jonas. One stupid, meaningless kiss. I'm not asking you to forgive and forget overnight, but you're acting like I had an affair." "Aren't you?" he asked, turning to face me. "You kissed another man, in public, while wearing my engagement ring. It's not the same thing and you know it. Do I?" He walked past me toward the bedroom. "I'm going to stay in the guest room for a while. I need some space to think." "Jonas, wait." But he was already gone, leaving me alone with my coffee and my justifications. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the comments on Jessica's post again. Most of them were supportive, calling me a queen, and praising my dress. A few people had noticed the kiss, but they seemed more amused than scandalized. I crafted a carefully worded Instagram post. "Amazing night with my work family. Sometimes you need to remind yourself that life is meant to be lived, not just endured. Grateful for friends who support my journey and don't judge me for being human." Authenticity. Living my truth. No regrets. Within minutes, the likes and supportive comments started pouring in. Jessica commented with fire emojis. Marcus wrote, "You're glowing, girl." And several other colleagues chimed in with encouragement. "See?" Most people understood that life was complicated and messy. Most people didn't expect perfection. I spent the rest of the morning cleaning the apartment and doing laundry, trying to create a sense of normalcy. Jonas emerged from the guest room around noon, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt instead of his usual button-down shirt. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Tom's house," he said, referring to his older brother. "We're going to watch the game." "Since when do you watch football at Tom's house?" "Since today." He grabbed his keys from the counter. "I'll be back tonight." After he left, I called my sister Maya to vent about Jonas's overreaction. "Wait, back up," Maya interrupted after I'd given her the basic story. "You kissed Toby Rix, your ex from college?" "It wasn't planned, Maya. It just happened, and it meant nothing." "Elowen, you're engaged to be married in 6 months. How does kissing your ex-boyfriend just happen?" "You sound just like Jonas," I snapped. "I thought you'd be more understanding." "I am trying to understand, but honestly, Elle, this sounds pretty bad. How would you feel if Jonas kissed his ex-girlfriend at some work event?" "That's different. Jonas would never." "Why is it different?" "Because he's more loyal than you are." The accusation stung. "That's not fair, Maya." "Isn't it? Look, I love you, but you've always had this problem with taking responsibility for your actions. Remember when you cheated on your SATs and blamed the proctor for not watching carefully enough? Or when you got fired from that boutique and claimed your manager was jealous of you? This is completely different. Is it? Or are you just doing what you always do when you mess up? Minimize it, blame someone else, and expect everyone to move on like nothing happened?" I hung up on her and immediately called my mother, who was much more sympathetic. "Oh, honey," Mom sighed after I told her an edited version of the story. "Men can be so sensitive about these things. Jonas will come around. He knows how lucky he is to have you." "That's what I keep trying to tell him, but he's being so cold and dramatic." "He's probably just scared of losing you. You're young and beautiful and successful. Maybe this will remind him not to take you for granted." "Exactly. Thank you for understanding, Mom. I knew you'd see it from my perspective." "Of course, sweetheart. Jonas is a good man, but he can be a little boring. Maybe this will spice things up a bit." After we hung up, I felt vindicated. My mother was right. Jonas was probably just scared and insecure. Once he calmed down and realized how lucky he was to have me, we'd be able to move past this minor hiccup. I spent the afternoon responding to Instagram comments and posting a few more subtle messages about growth and not letting others dim your light. The support from my friends and colleagues was overwhelming. Clearly, I wasn't the villain here. When Jonas came home that evening, he went straight to his office and closed the door. I could hear him on the phone with someone, his voice too low to make out the words. Later, I heard papers rustling and the sound of file drawers opening and closing. Around 10 o'clock, I knocked on his office door. "Jonas, are you coming to bed?" "I'll be up late," he said through the door. "Don't wait up." I pressed my ear to the door and heard him typing on his computer, the rapid click of keys that suggested he was working on something important. Probably just catching up on the work he'd missed while sulking at his brother's house. As I got ready for bed, I checked my phone one more time. The Instagram post had over 200 likes now, and several people had shared it to their stories with supportive messages. One comment particularly stood out, from a woman I'd met at a networking event. "You're an inspiration. Life is too short to live by other people's rules. Keep shining, Queen." I screenshotted the comment and posted it to my story with a heart emoji. Maybe Jonas would see it and realize that his reaction was extreme and outdated. Maybe he'd understand that what happened with Toby was actually a sign of my vitality and desirability, not a betrayal. As I drifted off to sleep alone in our king-size bed, I could still hear Jonas moving around in his office. Part of me wanted to go to him, to try to explain one more time how meaningless the kiss had been. But a bigger part of me was tired of apologizing for being human, for having needs that weren't being met, for refusing to shrink myself to make others comfortable. If Jonas couldn't handle being engaged to a woman who was still attractive and desired by other men, maybe he wasn't the right person for me after all. The family dinner at Romano's was supposed to be a celebration of my cousin's promotion, but I could feel the tension the moment we walked through the restaurant doors. Jonas had barely spoken to me during the drive, and when he did talk, it was only to give short, polite responses to my attempts at conversation. "There's my beautiful daughter," Mum exclaimed, jumping up from the large round table to hug me. "You look radiant, honey. Doesn't she look radiant, Jonas?" Jonas managed a weak smile. "She always looks beautiful." The words should have made me happy, but his tone was so flat and mechanical that they felt more like an obligation than a compliment. My sister Maya was already seated next to her husband David, and I could see the concern in her eyes as she watched Jonas and me take our seats. Across the table, Jonas's father Peter was studying his menu with unusual intensity, while his wife Linda made small talk with my Aunt Carol. "So, Elowen," my cousin Brett said as the waiter brought our drinks, "I saw your Instagram post from that work party. Looked like a fun night." I felt Jonas stiffen beside me, but I kept my smile bright. It was amazing. The company really knows how to throw a party. Open bar, great DJ, beautiful venue. "The Marriott downtown, right?" Maya asked casually. "I've been to events there. They have security cameras everywhere." The comment felt pointed, but I chose to ignore the implication. The ballroom was gorgeous, very elegant. "I'm sure it was," Peter said quietly, finally looking up from his menu. "Though I imagine some guests might have found the evening more memorable than others." Linda shot her husband a warning look, but the damage was done. The entire table had gone quiet, and I could feel everyone's eyes on me. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, my voice sharper than I'd intended. "Nothing at all," Peter said, but his tone suggested otherwise. "Just making conversation about memorable evenings." Jonas's hand was clenched so tightly around his water glass that his knuckles had gone white. I reached over to touch his arm, but he pulled away slightly. "Well, I think it's wonderful that Elowen had such a good time," Mum said diplomatically. "She works so hard, she deserves to let loose once in a while." "Absolutely," agreed my Aunt Carol. "Life is short. You have to seize the moments of joy when they come." Maya cleared her throat. "Sometimes, though, it's important to consider how our actions affect the people we love." "Maya," I warned, "I'm just saying that when you're in a committed relationship, especially when you're engaged, your actions reflect on your partner too." "What exactly are you trying to say?" I demanded, my voice rising slightly. "I think she's trying to say," Peter interjected, "that some actions have consequences that extend beyond the person making the choice." "Okay, that's enough," I snapped. "I don't know what everyone thinks they know about my life, but I'm getting really tired of these cryptic comments and judgmental looks." "Elowen," Jonas said quietly, "maybe we should just order." "No, Jonas. If people have something to say about me, they should say it directly, instead of hiding behind passive-aggressive comments." Linda looked uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should change the subject." "Actually," Maya said, setting down her wine glass, "I think we should address the elephant in the room. Elowen, half the people at this table have seen the video of you kissing your ex-boyfriend. The other half have heard about it. Pretending it didn't happen isn't going to make this go away." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel my face burning with embarrassment and anger. "It was one kiss," I said finally. "One stupid, meaningless kiss that got blown completely out of proportion because people love drama." "A kiss with your ex-boyfriend," Peter said coldly, "while wearing my son's engagement ring. It didn't mean anything." "Then why did you do it?" Maya asked. "Because I'm human. Because I made a mistake. Because sometimes people do impulsive things when they've had a few drinks." "But why him?" Maya pressed. "Why Toby? You could have kissed anyone at that party, but you chose your ex-boyfriend. The one you always said was the great love of your college years." I felt trapped, surrounded by accusatory faces and disappointed stares. Even the waiter seemed to sense the tension and had stopped approaching our table. "You know what?" I said, standing up abruptly. "I don't have to sit here and be attacked by my own family. I made a mistake. I admitted it was a mistake and I apologized. If that's not enough for you people, then maybe I should just leave. Elowen, sit down, Mom said firmly. You're making a scene. I looked around and realized that other diners were indeed staring at our table. A woman at the neighboring table was openly recording our conversation with her phone. Great, I muttered, sinking back into my chair. Just great. Jonas leaned over and whispered, The woman behind you is live streaming this on TikTok. I can see her screen. My stomach dropped. Are you serious? Dead serious. She's got about 50 viewers right now. I turned around and sure enough, a young woman with purple hair was holding her phone up, clearly capturing our family drama for social media entertainment. Excuse me, I said loudly. Could you please stop recording our private conversation? It's a public restaurant, the woman replied with a smirk. Freedom of speech and all that. It's also basic human decency, Jonas said, standing up. Turn off the phone. Make me, the woman challenged. That's when things got really ugly. Jonas walked over to her table and calmly asked the restaurant manager to intervene. The woman started shouting about her rights and calling Jonas controlling and aggressive. Other diners pulled out their phones to record the confrontation. Within minutes, our family dinner had become a viral moment. I could see people posting to their Instagram stories in real time, tagging the restaurant's location and using hashtags like East Drama Alert and Yes, our cheating fiancé. I need to get out of here, I whispered to Jonas when he returned to our table. For the first time in days, his expression softened slightly. Let's go. We left money on the table and made our way toward the exit, ignoring the cameras and whispered comments from other diners. In the parking lot, Jonas was quiet as we got into his car. I'm sorry, I said as he started the engine. I'm so sorry about all of this. Which part are you sorry for? He asked, not looking at me. The kiss, the lying, or the public humiliation? All of it, everything. Jonas, I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen, he said quietly. And now it's not just between us anymore. Now it's entertainment for strangers on the internet. As if on cue, my phone started buzzing with notifications. The TikTok video was already being shared across multiple platforms, with comments ranging from supportive to brutal. This will blow over, I said, more to convince myself than him. In a week, people will have moved on to something else. Jonas didn't respond. He just drove us home in silence, while I watched my reputation crumble in real time on social media. When we got back to the apartment, Jonas went straight to his office and closed the door. I could hear him making phone calls, his voice low and serious. Around 11 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from him, even though he was just down the hall. You'll get the answers you want soon. I stared at the cryptic message, my heart racing. What did that mean? What answers? What was he planning? I knocked on his office door, but he didn't respond. The light stayed on until well after midnight, and I fell asleep to the sound of papers rustling and file cabinets opening and closing. The next few days passed in a blur of awkward silences and forced normalcy. Jonas continued sleeping in the guest room, emerging only for coffee and quick meals that we ate in uncomfortable quiet. I threw myself into work, hoping that staying busy would help me forget about the growing distance between us. But work wasn't the refuge I'd hoped it would be. The video from the restaurant had somehow made its way to my colleagues, and I could feel their eyes on me whenever I walked through the office. Conversation stopped when I entered rooms, and I caught people whispering behind their hands. Don't let them get to you, Jessica said during our lunch break. People love to tear down successful women. You're just an easy target right now. I know, I sighed, picking at my salad. It's just frustrating. One mistake and suddenly everyone thinks they know my whole story. The internet has a short attention span, Marcus assured me. This will all be forgotten by next week. But even as my work friends offered support, I could sense something different in their tone. The enthusiasm felt forced, and I noticed they weren't inviting me to their usual after-work drinks anymore. At home, things were getting worse. Jonas had started staying late at the office, and when he was home, he spent most of his time locked in his study. I could hear him on long phone calls, his voice serious and businesslike. Sometimes I caught snippets of conversation through the door, words like documentation and timeline and consultation. On Thursday evening, I decided I couldn't take the silence anymore. I knocked on his office door and waited for permission to enter. "Come in," he said, without looking up from his computer. The room looked different somehow. Usually cluttered with random papers and coffee cups, his desk was now meticulously organized. File folders were stacked in neat piles, and I could see printed emails and bank statements arranged in chronological order. "What are you working on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Just organizing some things," he said, minimizing the window on his screen before I could see what he'd been typing. "Jonas, we need to talk about what's happening between us. This silent treatment isn't solving anything." He finally looked at me, and I was struck by how tired he looked. "What would you like to talk about, Elowen?" "About us, about our future, about how we move past this." "Do we move past this?" he asked quietly. "Of course we do. Jonas, I love you. I want to marry you. I want us to have the life we planned together." "Do you?" He leaned back in his chair, studying my face. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you want a different life entirely." "That's not true." "Isn't it? When was the last time you talked about our wedding plans? When was the last time you seemed excited about our future together?" I opened my mouth to protest, but realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd brought up the wedding without Jonas prompting me. "I've been busy with work." "So have I," he said, "but I still managed to book our engagement photos and research honeymoon destinations and call 3 different caterers this month. When was the last time you did anything to plan our wedding?" The question hung in the air between us. The truth was, I'd been so focused on feeling unappreciated and bored that I'd stopped actively participating in our wedding planning months ago. "I didn't realize you'd been doing all of that," I said quietly. "Of course you didn't, because you stopped paying attention to what I was doing. You stopped seeing me as anything other than an obstacle to your happiness." "That's not fair, isn't it?" He opened one of the file folders and pulled out a printed screenshot. "This is from your Instagram post last month. Sometimes you have to ask yourself if you're living the life you want or just the life you think you should want." "What did that mean, Elowen?" I stared at the printout, remembering the post. I'd written it after a particularly frustrating evening when Jonas had fallen asleep during a movie I'd wanted to watch together. It was just a random thought. It didn't mean anything specific. "And this one?" He showed me another screenshot. "Feeling grateful for friends who remind me that I'm still young and full of possibilities. That was posted the day after you had drinks with your work friends. What possibilities were you thinking about?" "Jonas, you're reading way too much into some silly social media posts." "Am I?" He pulled out more screenshots, and I realized with growing horror that he'd been documenting my online activity for weeks. Here's one from 3 weeks ago. "Is it settling if you choose security over passion?" And this one. "Some days I feel like I'm living someone else's life." Seeing my posts laid out like that, in chronological order, painted a picture I didn't want to acknowledge. It looked like the thoughts of someone who was actively unhappy in her relationship, someone who was looking for an exit strategy. "I was just processing some feelings," I said weakly. "What feelings, Elowen? What were you processing?" I couldn't answer him, because the truth was that I had been questioning our relationship, wondering if I was settling, feeling like something was missing, but I'd never intended to act on those feelings. The kiss with Toby had been an impulse, not a plan. "I think," Jonas said quietly, "that what happened with Toby wasn't a mistake. I think it was a choice. Maybe not a conscious one, but a choice nonetheless." "That's not true." "Then explain to me why you haven't deleted his number from your phone." My blood ran cold. "What?" "Toby's number. It's still in your phone." I saw it when you were showing me pictures last weekend. I had forgotten that Toby's contact information was still saved from years ago. I'd never bothered to delete it because I'd never thought I'd need to use it. I forgot it was even there. Have you texted him since the party? No. The lie came out too quickly, too forcefully. Jonas's expression didn't change, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Elowen, I can see your phone bill online. We share an account, remember? My heart started racing. I had texted Toby just once the day after the party. A simple, hope your client dinner went well message that he'd never responded to. But Jonas was right. It would show up on our shared phone bill. It was just a polite follow-up. Stop, Jonas said firmly. Just stop lying to me. Please. The room fell silent except for the hum of his computer and the distant sound of traffic outside. I felt exposed, caught in a web of small deceptions that had seemed harmless individually, but looked damning when assembled together. What happens now? I asked quietly. I don't know, Jonas said, turning back to his computer. I honestly don't know. I left his office feeling worse than when I'd entered. As I got ready for bed, I could hear him making another phone call, his voice too low to make out the words. Around midnight, I heard him leave the apartment, which was strange because Jonas never went anywhere after 10 o'clock. He returned an hour later with a manila envelope that he took directly to his office. I heard the sound of a scanner running for several minutes, then more typing and clicking. As I lay in bed alone, staring at the ceiling, I tried to figure out how everything had spiraled so far out of control. A week ago, my biggest complaint was that Jonas was boring. Now I was facing the possibility that I might lose him entirely. But even as I felt panic rising in my chest, a part of me wondered if that would be such a terrible thing. Maybe we'd both be happier apart. Maybe I deserved someone who appreciated my spontaneity and zest for life, instead of documenting my social media posts like evidence in a criminal case. I fell asleep to the sound of Jonas's printer running, churning out page after page of whatever he was working on in his meticulously organized office. Friday morning brought an unexpected email from my boss, Damien, requesting a meeting to discuss the upcoming investor dinner next week. It was a huge opportunity for our marketing firm. Potential clients worth millions of dollars would be attending, and I'd been chosen to give a presentation about our recent campaign successes. This could be career-defining for you, Elowen, Damien said, as we sat in his corner office overlooking downtown. If we land even 2 of these accounts, you're looking at a promotion and a significant raise. For the first time in days, I felt genuinely excited about something. This was exactly the kind of opportunity I'd been working toward for years. I won't let you down, Damien. I've been preparing for weeks. I know you have, and I want you to know that despite some of the social media chatter this week, I have complete confidence in your professionalism and abilities. I felt my cheeks burn. I appreciate that. I know there's been some gossip. There's always gossip, he said dismissively. What matters is results, and you deliver results. Just keep your head down, focus on the presentation, and show these investors why we're the best marketing firm in the city. Walking back to my desk, I felt renewed purpose. This investor dinner would be my chance to prove that I was more than tabloid drama and social media controversy. I was a talented professional with real value to offer. The weekend passed quietly. Jonas continued his pattern of polite distance, spending Saturday at his brother's house and Sunday organizing more files in his office. I used the time to perfect my presentation and plan my outfit for the investor dinner. On Sunday evening, I found a note from Jonas on the kitchen counter. Check your email tomorrow. J. The message was cryptic and somehow ominous, but I was too focused on the upcoming dinner to dwell on it. Whatever Jonas was planning, I'd deal with it after I'd secured the biggest professional opportunity of my career. Monday morning, I arrived at the office early to run through my presentation one more time. The investor dinner was being held at the same hotel where the company party had taken place, which felt like poetic justice. I'd return to the scene of my supposed crime and emerge victorious, proving that I was stronger than the gossip and drama. Around 10 o'clock, Jessica stopped by my desk with coffee and a concerned expression. "Elowen, I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "There's been some talk around the office about tonight." "What kind of talk?" "Some people are saying that having you present at the investor dinner might not be the best idea. You know, given everything that's happened this week." I felt anger flare in my chest. "Are you serious? Since when do my personal life choices affect my professional capabilities?" "I'm not saying I agree with them," Jessica said quickly. "I'm just giving you a heads up. Marcus mentioned that his wife saw the restaurant video and thought it reflected poorly on the company's values." "Marcus's wife doesn't even work here." I know. But you know how these things spread. People talk, and sometimes it affects business relationships. I spent the rest of the day fielding sideways glances and whispered conversations. By 5 o'clock, I was more determined than ever to nail the presentation and prove that my personal life had nothing to do with my professional excellence. I went home to get ready, choosing a sophisticated navy dress that projected confidence and competence. As I was applying my makeup, I heard Jonas moving around in his office, the familiar sounds of printing and file organization. "I'm leaving for the investor dinner," I called out as I grabbed my purse and presentation materials. "Good luck," he replied through the closed door. The words should have felt supportive, but his tone was flat and emotionless. Still, I didn't have time to analyze Jonas's mood. I had a career to save and a reputation to rebuild. The hotel ballroom looked different than it had the week before. Instead of party lights and a DJ booth, it was set up for a formal dinner with round tables and a small stage for presentations. I arrived early to test the audiovisual equipment and review my notes one more time. "Elowen." Damien appeared at my side with a group of well-dressed men and women. "I'd like you to meet some of our potential clients. This is Elowen Mirth, our star marketing coordinator." I shook hands and made small talk, feeling confident and professional. These people didn't know about viral videos or family drama. To them, I was simply a talented marketing professional with impressive campaign results to share. As dinner was served, I mingled with the investors, answering questions about our strategies and building rapport. Several people seemed genuinely interested in our services, and I could practically feel the promotion within my grasp. "Ladies and gentlemen," Damien announced as the dessert plates were cleared, "please welcome Elowen Mirth, who will be presenting our recent campaign successes." I stood up and walked confidently toward the stage, my presentation remote in hand and my talking points memorized perfectly. This was my moment to prove that I was more than the sum of my mistakes. But as I reached the podium, I noticed a commotion near the ballroom entrance. A man in a suit was speaking quietly with hotel security, holding a manila envelope and what looked like legal documents. My blood ran cold as I realized the man was walking directly toward our table. Toward me. "Elowen Mirth," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet ballroom. "Yes," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "You've been served," he announced, holding out the envelope. "Divorce papers and a restraining order. You have 30 days to respond." The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Every investor, every colleague, every hotel staff member was staring at me as I stood frozen on the stage, divorce papers in my trembling hands. I looked toward our table and saw Jonas sitting calmly in the back corner, wearing his best suit and watching the proceedings with an expression of quiet satisfaction. Our eyes met across the room, and I realized that this had all been planned. The timing, the location, the public nature of the serving, it was all deliberate. "Ma'am," the process server prompted, "do you understand that you've been served with legal documents?" Yes, I managed to say, my voice cracking. As the man walked away, the ballroom erupted in whispered conversations, and the soft click of phone cameras. I could see investors exchanging concerned glances and Damien's face turning red with embarrassment. Jonas stood up from his table and walked calmly toward the exit, pausing only to nod politely at Damien. "Excellent dinner," he said quietly. "Thank you for the invitation." And then he was gone, leaving me standing on the stage with divorce papers in my hands and the ruins of my career scattered around my feet. "Perhaps," Damien said quietly, "we should reschedule this presentation." But we both knew there would be no rescheduling. As I gathered my materials and walked toward the exit, I could hear the investors already discussing their concerns about working with a company whose employees brought personal drama to professional events. In the hotel lobby, I finally opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were divorce papers, a custody agreement for assets, and a thick folder labeled Evidence. The folder contained printed screenshots of every social media post I'd made questioning our relationship, phone records showing my text to Toby, and still images from the security camera footage of our kiss. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note from Jonas. "You wanted answers about whether you were living the life you wanted. Now you'll have the chance to find out. J." I sank into a lobby chair and stared at the documents, finally understanding that Jonas hadn't been organizing files for work. He'd been building a case. Methodically, carefully, and completely legally, he'd documented every lie, every deception, and every sign that I'd already checked out of our relationship emotionally. The Jonas I'd dismissed as boring and predictable had outmaneuvered me completely. While I'd been posting about authenticity and living my truth, he'd been quietly preparing for the inevitable end of our relationship with the same attention to detail he brought to everything else. As hotel guests and staff walked past me in the lobby, I realized that my public humiliation was complete. The woman who'd accused her fiancé of being boring and predictable had been defeated by his patience, planning, and perfect timing. I had wanted excitement and drama in my life. Now I had more of both than I could handle.